I think there's little doubt that Browning's later poetry, that is, from about the late 1860s onwards, isn't much read and isn't much regarded. The general received opinion is that Browning repeated himself, became more mannered, and for all his continued copiousness, lost himself at just about the time that he'd reached his greatest fame. Well, there's something in all that, but it's not the whole truth. The In Album was published in 1875. It's a narrative written in 8 substantial sections or scenes, a story of seduction, suicide and murder which deserves to be read. It's certainly more manageable than The Ring and the Book. We've just got time for the opening, a characteristically buttonholing opening to a Browning poem, spoken by one of the central characters, a youngish old man, or man oldish young, as Browning puts it later, followed by a bit of scene setting. The character and his companion are hovering over the visitor's book.
That oblong book's the album. Hand it here. Exactly. Page on page of gratitude for breakfast, dinner, supper, and the view. I praise these poets. They leave margin space. Each stanza seems to gather skirts around, and primly keep the foots confined, modest and maid-like. Lubber prose or sprawls, and straddling stops the path from left to right. Since I want space to do my cipher work, which poem spares a corner, what comes first? Hail, calm acclivity, salubrious spot. Open the window, we burn daylight, boy. Or see, succincter beauty, brief and bold. If a fellow can dine on rump steaks and port wine, he needs not despair of dining well here. Here? I myself could find a better rhyme. That bard's a Browning. He neglects the form. But the sense, ye gods, the weighty sense. Still, I prefer this classic. I throw wide. I'll quench the bits of candle yet unburnt. A minute's fresh air, then to cipher work. 3 little columns hold the whole account. Écarté, after which blind hooky, then cutting the pack. £500 the cut. 'Tis easy reckoning. I have lost, I think. 2 personages occupy this room, shabby genteel, that's parlour to the inn, perched on a view-commanding eminence. Inn which may be a veritable house, where somebody once lived and pleased good taste, till tourists found his coign of vantage out, and fingered blunt the individual mark, and vulgarized things comfortably smooth. On a sprig-pattern-papered wall there brays, complaint to sky, Sir Edwin's dripping stag. His couchant coastguard creature corresponds. They face the Huguenot and Light of the World. Grim o'er the mirror on the mantelpiece, varnished and coffined, Salmo Ferox glares, possibly at the list of wines, which, framed and glazed, hangs somewhat prominent on peg.
Browning picked up the story of the In Album from a factual source. So did Tennyson in one of his narrative poems of the 1870s, Rizpah. He found it in A Little Penny Magazine, and it's the monologue of a mother whose son was hanged for robbery in 1793. Tennyson took his title from an analogous mother in the 2nd book of Samuel.
Wailing, 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 the wind over land and sea, and Willie's voice in the wind, "Oh, mother, come out to me." Why should he call me tonight, when he knows that I cannot go? For the downs are as bright as day, and the full moon stares at the snow. We should be seen, my dear. They would spy us out of the town. The loud black nights for us, and the storm rushing over the down, when I cannot see my own hand, but am led by the creak of the chain, and grovel and grope for my son, till I find myself drenched with the rain. Anything fallen again? Nay, what was there left to fall? I've taken them home, I've numbered the bones, I've hidden them all. What am I saying? And what are you? To you comes a spy. Falls? What falls? Who knows? As the tree falls, so must it lie. Oh, let her in. How long has she been? You, what have you heard? Why did you sit so quiet? You've never spoken a word. Oh, to pray with me. Yes, a lady, none of their spies. But the night has crept into my heart and begun to darken my eyes. Ah, you that have lived so soft, what should you know of the night, the blast and the burning shame and the bitter frost and the fright? I've done it while you were asleep. You were only made for the day. I've gathered my baby together, and now you may go your way. Nay, for it's kind of you, madam, to sit by an old dying wife. But say nothing hard of my boy. I have only an hour of life. I kissed my boy in the prison before he went out to die. They dared me to do it, he said, and he never has told me a lie. I whipped him for robbing an orchard once when he was but a child. The farmer dared me to do it, he said. He was always so wild and idle, and couldn't be idle, my Willie. He never could rest. The king should have made him a soldier. He would have been one of his best. But he lived with a lot of wild mates, and they never would let him be good. They swore that he dare not rob the mail, and he swore that he would. And he took no life, but he took one purse, and when all was done, he flung it among his fellows. "I'll none of it," said my son. I came into court to the judge and the lawyers. I told them my tale, God's own truth. But they killed him. They killed him for robbing the mail. They hanged him in chains for a show. We'd always borne a good name. To be hanged for a thief and then put away, isn't that enough shame? Dust to dust, low down let us hide. But they set him so high that all the ships of the world could stare at him passing by. God'll pardon the hell-black raven and horrible fowls of the air, but not the black heart of the lawyer who killed him and hanged him there. And the jailer forced me away. I'd bid him my last goodbye. They'd fastened the door of his cell. "Oh, mother," I heard him cry. I couldn't get back, though I tried. He had something further to say, and now I shall never know it. The jailer forced me away. Then, since I couldn't but hear that cry of my boy that was dead, they seized me and shut me up. They fastened me down on my bed. "Mother, oh mother," he called in the dark to me year after year. They beat me for that, they beat me. You know that I couldn't but hear. And then, at the last, they found I'd grown so stupid and still. They let me abroad again, but the creatures had worked their will. Flesh of my flesh was gone, but bone of my bone was left. I stole them all from the lawyers, and you, will you call it a theft? My baby, the bones that had sucked me, the bones that had laughed and had cried, theirs? Oh, no, they are mine, not theirs. They had moved in my side. Do you think I was scared by the bones? I kissed 'em. I buried 'em all. I can't dig deep, I'm old. In the night by the churchyard wall. My Willie'll rise up whole when the trumpet of judgment will sound, but I charge you never to say that I laid him in holy ground. They would scratch him up. They would hang him again on the cursed tree. Sin? Oh, yes, we are sinners, I know. Let all that be. And read me a Bible verse of the Lord's good will toward men. Full of compassion and mercy, the Lord. Let me hear it again. Full of compassion and mercy, long-suffering. Yes, oh, yes. For the lawyer is born but to murder, the Saviour lives but to bless. He'll never put on the black cap except for the worst of the worst, and the first may be last, I've heard it in church, and the last may be first. Suffering, oh, long suffering, Yes, as the Lord must know, year after year, in the mist and the wind and the shower and the snow. Heard, have you? What? They've told you he never repented his sin? How do they know it? Are they his mother? Are you of his kin? Heard? Have you ever heard, when the storm on the downs began, the wind that'll wail like a child and the sea that'll moan like a man? Election, election and reprobation, it's all very well, but I go tonight to my boy, and I shall not find him in hell. For I cared so much for my boy that the Lord has looked into my care, and he means me, I'm sure, to be happy with Willie, I know not where. And if he be lost, but to save my soul, that is all your desire, do you think that I care for my soul if my boy be gone to the fire? I have been with God in the dark. Go, go, you may leave me alone. You never have borne a child. You are just as hard as a stone. Madam, I beg your pardon. I think that you mean to be kind, but I cannot hear what you say for my Willie's voice in the wind, the snow and the sky so bright. He used but to call in the dark, and he calls to me now from the church, and not from the gibbet. For hark! Nay, you can hear it yourself. It is coming, shaking the walls. Willie, the moon's in a cloud. Good night. I am going. He calls.
Before moving into lighter territory, here's a famously gloomy heroic statement by W.E. Henley. One of those poems that so thoroughly come into the language that people quote it, or bits of it, quite often without having any idea who wrote it. Henley's Invictus.
Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
Victorian light verse was a flourishing genre, as any anthology of the period shows, or should show. I know nothing about the author of the following piece, except that he published the book from which it's taken, entitled Mirth, in 1878. I picked it up from Kingsley Amis's New Oxford Book of Light Verse, and was glad to do so. It shows that gossip columnists, and even perhaps equivalents of Private Eye, were current in the period. Godfrey Turner's The Journal of Society.
Oh, have you seen the Tattlesnake? And have you read what's in it? About, dear me, what's his name? I'll tell you in a minute. Thwaite. No, not Thwaite. Buckhawketail? No. Gillingwater. Coots? The man who wears a high-crowned hat and patent leather boots. In philanthropic circles he is known as Ready Bob. I think he lives out Kilburn way and rides a chestnut cob. He gets it in the Tattlesnake. I wonder how he feels when all his friends their shoulders shrug and turn upon their heels. We thought him such a thoroughbred, and now it's all found out. They'd hardly dare to write like that if there were any doubt. Besides, twixt you and me, you know, there was a something queer about his early history, I think I used to hear. You don't remember? Well, I do. Although I could not say precisely what the story was at such a distant day. These things will always hang about a fellow's afterlife. Oh, now I know. Yes, was there not some talk about his wife? Or else it was his sister, or his mother, or his aunt. Though, if I'm asked to give the facts, I frankly say I can't. But get that Tattlesnake, my boy. You'll find it worth the money. Unless, that is, you're one of those who don't think scandal funny. Oh, that class of writing lacks, I own, the literary zeal to add a charm to Addison, or polish put on steel. Between the Tattlestake and them it's not a case of choosing, but personality, if dull, is in its way amusing. Although the way's not that of wit, nor graciousness, nor grammar, you would not have a rapier point upon a blacksmith's hammer. But what of that? On certain ears wit blunted tells the best, and satire glads the public heart when as a libel dressed. Of course I don't defend the thing, it's bad in many ways, but is not this the golden age? And I suppose it pays, so get that Tattlesnake. It's dead? Bless me, you don't mean that? Well, after all, I'm not surprised. I thought it rather flat. By chance I saw it once or twice, and then I found it slow. That shameful article I read about a month ago. But still, some dirt will always stick. And long as he may live, that same dirt had not been flung, £1,000 he'd give, when all his old acquaintance cut, and every urchin hoots the man who wears the high-crowned hat and patent leather boots.
Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking-Glass was published in 1872, the equally successful sequel to Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. From it, and from all Carroll's adept and inventive verses, I've chosen the most purely inventive, about the fictitious monster. To invent a whole vocabulary, and one which makes such sense that some of the words have by now become naturalized, requires a special order of originality.
'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jubjub bird, and shun the frumious Bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the manxome foe he sought. So rested he by the Tumtum tree, and stood a while in thought. And as in uppish thought he stood, the Jabberwock with eyes of flame came whiffling through the tulgey wood, and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. Oh, frabjous day, callooh, calais, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrabe.
The example I've chosen from Edward Lear is playing within the same area, with the big difference that Lear's vocabulary is manipulated, not invented. He subtitled this piece An Indian Poem, with the note, "This should be read without bothering about the meanings of queer words." It was, of course, a period when many British people of all types and classes came to know something of India, a fact we will take more note of when we reach the next programme and Kipling. Here is Edward Lear's The Cummerbund.
She sat upon her dobie to watch the evening star, and all the punkahs as they passed cried, "My, how fair you are!" Around her bower with quivering leaves the tall kamsamas grew, and kitmagars in wild festoons hung down from chokis blue. Below her home the river rolled with soft melodious sound, where golden-finned chuprases swam in myriads circling round. Above, on tallest trees remote, green ayers perched alone, and all night long the mussak moaned its melancholy tone. And where the purple nullahs threw their branches far and wide, and silvery gory-wallahs flew in silence side by side, the little beasties' twittering cry rose on the flagrant air, and oft the angry jampan howled deep in his hateful lair. She sat upon her dobie, she heard the nimmak hum, when all at once a cry arose, "The cummerbund is come!" In vain she fled, with open jaws the angry monster followed, and so, before assistance came, that lady fair was swallowed. They sought in vain for even a bone respect the little berry. They said, hers was a dreadful fate, and Echo answered, very. They nailed her Dobie to the wall, where last her form was seen, and underneath they wrote these words, in yellow, blue, and green. Beware, ye fair, beware, nor sit out late at night, lest horrid cummerbund should come, and swallow you outright.
Back home, the minor laureate of domestic sentiment was Coventry Patmore, whose sequences The Angel in the House and To the Unknown Eros had some contemporary success. Parts of both deserve to survive, and a few do. One of them, which I like for its circumstantialness, is this, Coventry Patmore's The Toys.
My little son, who looked from thoughtful eyes, and moved and spoke in quiet grown-up wise, having my law the 7th time disobeyed, I struck him and dismissed, with hard words and unkissed. His mother, who was patient, being dead. Then, fearing lest his grief should hinder sleep, I visited his bed, but found him slumbering deep, with darkened eyelids, and their lashes yet from his late sobbing wet. And I, with moan, kissing away his tears, left other of my own. For on a table drawn beside his head, he had put within his reach a box of counters and a red-veined stone, a piece of glass abraded by the beach, and 6 or 7 shells, a bottle with bluebells, and 2 French copper coins, ranged there with careful art to comfort his sad heart. So when that night I prayed to God, I wept and said, Ah, when at last we lie with tranced breath, not vexing thee in death, and thou rememberest of what toys we made our joys, how weakly understood thy great commanded good, then, fatherly not less than I, whom thou hast moulded from the clay, thou'lt leave thy wrath, and say, I will be sorry for their childishness.
One of Patmore's correspondents was a man then totally unknown as a poet, who wrote to Patmore, Your poems are a good deed done for the Catholic Church, and another for England, for the British Empire. Not what many people would perhaps think of as characteristic words by Gerard Manley Hopkins. In 1876, Hopkins had emerged from a long poetic silence to write, in response to a suggestion from his rector, that forbidding masterpiece that lies at the entrance to his work, The Wreck of the Deutschland. It was to be his breakthrough, his discovery of his own astonishingly original voice. A year after The Wreck of the Deutschland, Hopkins wrote in 1877 half a dozen or so poems of celebration and ecstasy which are unique in English poetry. Among them was this, with which we'll end, The Windhover.
I caught this morning morning's minion, kingdom of daylight's dauphin, dapple dawn-drawn falcon, in his riding of the rolling level underneath him steady air, and striding high there, how he rung upon the rein of a wimpling wing in his ecstasy. Then off, forth on a swing, as a skate's heel sweeps smooth on a bow bend. The hurl and gliding rebuffed the big wind. My heart in hiding stirred for a bird, the achiever, the mastery of the thing. Brute beauty and valor and act, oh, air, pride, plume, here buckle, and the fire that breaks from thee then, a billion times told lovelier, more dangerous, oh, my chevalier. No wonder of it. Sheer plod makes plough-down Sicilian shine, and blue-bleak embers are, my dear, fall, gall themselves, and gash gold vermilion.